Hello, this is Luke Turner, and I'm back with another episode of building an exercise tracking web app from scratch. Let's get started here. Going to run the database, going to run the client-side bundler, and I'm going to open a new tab and run the server. And then once this launches, we can go to our web browser and open up the app. Okie doke. Let's see here. Ta-da! And we're in. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Well, actually, before I started the stream today, I did a couple things that I didn't want to actually do on stream because they involve secrets and things like that. So one of those is I created a new developer app in GitHub, a new OAuth app that we can use to authenticate with Exercise Tracker when it's actually deployed. The setup that I have before only works for localhost because you need to have these URLs set. So this one actually works for what's going to be the official deployed URL for this app, set.luketurner.org. I also set up a CNAME record for set.luketurner.org that points to the app's deployed URL on fly. So if I go to exercisetracker.fly.dev, this is the app's deployed URL. You can see it's running a really old version of the code. We haven't deployed it in a while. But now if I go to set.luketurner.org, that will redirect me. But we're missing a setup step. I didn't want to do everything off stream. I wanted to do as much as possible on stream. So we still have something to do before this is actually going to work. If we look at the fly, let's make a new terminal here. Secrets list. So the secrets for this app, better auth secret and database URL were already present. And earlier today I added two, the client ID and secret. So that was one of the changes. But we also need to set up a custom domain here. And what is the fly custom domain? So there's instructions here. Basically, all you do is set up the CNAME record, and then you need to run this fly certs add command. So certs add set.luketurner.org. And then that's going to do its thing. One thing to note, if we look here in the fly.toml, we have this force HTTPS set to true. And that's why when I browse here, it doesn't actually load because the HTTPS, like HTTP redirects to HTTPS, but HTTPS doesn't work because we don't have a certificate set up for this domain. And so there's no way to connect to it through this subdomain yet. So we're going to fix that. And doing that assignment should take a few minutes, but not that long. It might be ready by now. Okay, we're in. So the app's deployed, but this is an old version of the app. If we wanted to deploy the latest version, we could do a fly control launch, or pardon me, fly control deploy, like so. But I've also gone ahead and set up CI/CD off stream for this as well, because that requires setting a secret as well. So in our GitHub workflow, this already existed. This is automatically set up by Fly. And we just needed to set this Fly API token variable in GitHub. And so in the actual Fly dashboard, I created a application-specific token so it can only be used for this exercise tracker app specifically, and put that in my GitHub secrets for this repository. If we go repos, exercise tracker, I added the secret in here under settings, secrets and variables, fly API token. So now our actions, which up till now have been failing because they don't have that secret, should actually start to work. And so I wonder if it's possible to replay one of these. Rerun all jobs. Let's just see how this goes. Running the deployment. And actually, while that's happening, we don't need to watch that the whole time. Let's talk a little bit about what else we're going to be doing today. So if we go to our notes file here, custom DNS name, check. Update GitHub auth token, check. HTTP to HTTPS redirect. I added that in here, but because that's a setting in Fly, we don't need to actually do anything with it. So let's just get rid of it. One thing to note here, rename to set I have at the top of the list. So currently I just have been calling this app exercise tracker. How's this going? Going okay. So like if we look here, it's just called exercise tracker. And that is fine, but I like to give something a little bit more interesting of a name. And in particular, a bit shorter of a name as well. Like if I'm making a subdomain, I kind of like a slightly shorter subdomain than if it's like exercise-tracker.reduxengine.com. So what I've done instead is, done this set.reduxengine.com. And, I'm no expert on naming things, but like I was thinking about what should I call it? Like it's like easy exercise tracker, lightweight exercise tracker. And I was like, well, I could call it simple exercise tracker. And then I realized the acronym for simple exercise tracker was SET, which is also like a common term used in the actual app. And so I was like, let's just call it that. Simple exercise tracker, SET for short. And so that's what we're going to go with. So we're going to be renaming the app itself as well. Like I'm not going to rename the repository and things like that, but I am going to be renaming the app in the UI and where it's referenced in the manual and so on to SET. Okay, let's check on the deployment here. Did it work? Almost. Had to run the migrations. And then now it's deploying the app. I kind of want to try logging into the deployed app once it's ready to go to make sure that the GitHub secret is working. Well, let's just wait. While that's going, one other thing I want to do is update the README with some deployment instructions. So let's add that in here. Deploy it yourself. Exercise tracker is built for deployment on fly.io. And we can make that a link. That is the right link, right? Yeah. Okay, doke. Follow these steps to deploy it yourself. First, change the app name in the fly.toml to something unique. Run fly control launch. And well, let's see. Let's say add secrets. And if we look up here, so we need the better auth secret. The database URL secret is going to come with the app. So you really just need to add these three. And I guess you would do that after launching. Deploy with a Postgres instance when prompted. And then really that's pretty much it. You can create a custom domain if you want to. These instructions are not going to be that detailed though. Yeah, seems fine. Doesn't really matter too much. Mostly it's just for my own reference here. Okay, looks like our job completed. So now we can actually view the app online at set.luketurner.org. I should be able to sign in with GitHub. Did it work? Sign in with GitHub? No. CORS error. I don't think I need the slash. If I go over here to this one, doesn't have the slash. So what is this CORS error coming from? So this request URL is wrong, I guess. Where is that coming from? Must be a setting somewhere. Let's see, if I just search for localhost in here. Right, okay, so it's this here that we're going to need to change. So this base URL is going to need to So here's the problem. If this base URL is set to the proper value here, which would be set.luketurner.org. And I guess I can remove the trailing slash there. This is fine when it's deployed, but it's going to be a problem when running it locally. And so we want to conditionally set this base URL value based on whether or not it's deployed. Now you might think, well, just use an environment variable. But this is client-side code, right? So it's not actually going to have access to environment variables automatically in the JavaScript itself. Like I can't do like process.env.whatever like I would in Node. So what I need to do probably is pass in some kind of variable when the thing is being built here. So let's look at the esbuild docs and see if there's a way to do that. Esbuild build. There's got to be some kind of setting in here. Let's see. So we want to maybe define. Yeah. Something like this, maybe. So this is defining basically a variable called debug in this case and setting a value to it. So we're going to do something similar here. For client build specifically, we're going to add a deployed equals true. And I guess I should add something in here as well for update the client main.js file to use your DNS name. Okay, so this is setting deployed to true. And then like up here, you know, we could have something where it's like deployed equals false, just so that it's present. And then, and maybe I'll call that like prod instead of deployed. Doesn't really matter too much. Okay. So over here, then now I could say like base URL, if it's prod, then set it to this. Otherwise, set it to localhost 3000. Yep. And yep. And then let's restart our client bundler here. And we can kind of test this out on both ends of the application. So in dev, we should be able to sign in. That works. Sign out, sign in. And in prod, we also should be able to sign in once we deploy this change. So because we've set up CI/CD, all we really have to do is push this to GitHub to deploy it. So let's call this fix base URL for better auth client. Okay, and so that then we can just push. Oh yeah, let's do it this way so I don't have to enter my password a bunch of times. Git push. Cool. So we can see how this is going to work. Let's go back to the repository and check out the action running. And when that's done, we can test it out and see if it works. Okie doke. In the meantime, let's talk about some other things as well. Don't want to wait for that too much. So a lot of changes we could make here. Oh, did that. And I'll just commit that as well. Add deployment section to README. Let's do the renaming, I guess, while we're here. So I'm just going to start with the find and replace for exercise tracker, not case sensitive. So this one, obviously, we're not changing. I could move it to a whole different Fly application with a unique name, but since it's already deployed with this name and it's not a user-facing concern, I'm not going to worry about it. The package.json name, again, I'm not really worried about this, so I'm not going to change that either. It matches the GitHub repo at least. And the README, I might update. And I kind of want to do it like title case, like that. And update the intro. I mean, this is in the manual, which, as I talked about when I was doing the manual, I didn't really fully flesh this out, but I'm going to change the name in here anyway for now. In the layout, this one, again, we're going to keep. Here, we're going to do set. And here, we're going to do set. And here, we're going to do set. And what happens if we try just with a space? Is there anything? Yeah, so here we're going to do set as well. And set. And we'll see how we feel. This name as well, I mean, it's just kind of a an experiment, you know? We'll see how it feels. So here's an example, like this set now, I mean, even before it was a problem, but now it's even more of a problem that it doesn't stand out as a brand. It just looks like another link. So that's something we'll want to adjust as well. Anyway, let's see. So this build's probably done here, right? Yeah. Let's try logging in again. See if this is fixed. Sign in. Yep, authorize me. So just checking here, like when users log in, the only thing that my app will be able to actually see is their email address, which is what I want. It really shouldn't, you know, need anything else. It doesn't even really need that, but that's just kind of part of the way the OAuth things work. I don't know if there's a way to not get the email address. It's redirecting me back, or it's trying to. Seems like something is maybe not working though. Oh, no, it is. It worked. It just is taking its sweet time about it, I guess. Cool. Oh yeah, and we've got our onboarding flow. Very nice. Yeah, so we're in. And so if I go to manage exercises just to check it out here, I don't know why it's so kind of slow. That's odd. Usually things are slow like when you first do a request to the app because the fly machines are spun up dynamically. So it's like, you know, when you're not using the machine, which is like a virtual machine, it's like spun down so you don't have to pay for it. But then when a request comes in, the fly proxy will automatically like spin up a machine to respond to that request. So that first one sometimes takes a while, but after that, it shouldn't. But we are running into some problems, it looks like. API error, failed to get session. Connection to Postgres terminated unexpectedly. So what is the problem here? Does this not have a Postgres set up for it? I thought I did that, but could always be wrong. Let's take a look at what we've got going on. So in Fly, you can see, you know, what apps you have set up. So there should be a database set up for exercise tracker. And it seems like there is down here. And it is running. And there is a machine that is supposedly healthy. So what is the problem? I mean, presumably there could be an issue with the database URL. Like the database URL secret that's used by the deployed app is potentially no longer accurate for some reason, but it's a bit odd because that actually gets set by Fly automatically. So I feel like it shouldn't really change. I also feel like this bun run migration run shouldn't have worked if it couldn't connect to the database as well. So I'm a little bit unclear on what's happening there. It makes me wonder if something actually could connect, but it's having some kind of other problem. Connection terminated unexpectedly. Failed to get session. So I wonder if Better Auth is using something a little different from my actual client. So like I'm using Drizzle ORM for my database connection. And that should be fine, database URL. And if I look at the Drizzle config, again, it's database URL here. So that should be right. That should be right. If I look at the auth, provider PG, do I need to include that here as well? I don't see why that would be a thing. Base URL, base path, secret, database, dialect type. So the dialect was PG. Or no, the provider is PG. That's weird. Not sure what's up with that. The weird thing about that to me is I'm pretty sure that this actually worked before. Like database connection worked, but I know that, or I don't know that the Better Auth thing worked because we weren't able to test that until we had these client ID and client secret values. Okay. Well, that's something that I will probably have to fix, or I'll probably have to test fixing it anyway, off stream as well, because I'll be needing to connect to the database using the database URL, which is sort of like a secret value that I don't really want to share. Fix Better Auth database connectivity when deployed. Yeah, and this is kind of just like you can see 3 minutes after the last request, it actually just shuts down the machine. So once it does that, it's like I'm not paying for it anymore. That's one of the reasons I like to use Fly. It's pretty cost effective for things like hobby projects where they don't have to be deployed 24/7, but you want them to be able to spin up on the fly, so to speak. Anyway, we'll fix that later. But we're getting to the point where it's, should be mostly working when it's deployed. We've made a little bit of progress in that direction. Okay, so what else do we want to do today? Let me do a quick time check. 34 minutes. Got plenty of time left. I feel like two things that I might kind of like to do are these improving error handling situations and fixing the back buttons. These are just kind of like nice to haves, quality of user experience kind of things. So let's start by thinking about the error handling, I guess. So there's two cases that we talk about here: when a page cannot be loaded and when an AJAX request fails. So let's try when a page cannot be loaded first, just as an illustration here. I think I have a sense of what this is going to do, but we're going to give it a shot and kind of illustrate that. So in these controller methods, because we're using this controller method helper function here, any exceptions that are thrown will automatically be caught and handled. But whether they're handled in a useful way is a whole other question. So let's throw an error here, and you go, yeah, this one. So we just get this unknown error message. And that's coming from here. In this controller method function, we're catching an error, and if it's a ZOD error, so if there's like a validation issue, like if we add a required schema here, that's the wrong controller though. I want to add it up here. And now we refresh it. We're actually going to see that ZOD error. But if it's not a ZOD error, we get this unknown error text. And the reason for that is to swallow errors that might contain information that we don't want the user to see. Either partly just because it's confusing, partly because, if they are malicious, they could potentially learn things about the database schema. The errors might have values in it that they don't need to see. For an app like this, it's really not a problem, but it's good practice usually if you have like an unknown server error, in my experience, to swallow it, don't show the user, and then log it so that you, the developer, can see it. So you can tell what happened. But if it's an error that is known, then you should not swallow it and actually expose it to the user, because it's a lot more helpful for the user to see what actually went wrong. So the problem here, though, as you saw, is it's just rendering like this text. It's not like a page. It's just like a text. And so what we're actually going to do here is render an error view, I think, is probably the right move. So let's add a new file. We could call it error.pug. And just going to copy one of these. Let's just get the index one here because it's simple. And we could do like is danger error. Let's just see what this looks like. We're going to be adjusting this, but just want to get something out there first. So util. So now here, instead of just returning the status, we're going to do like resp.render error. And we're going to send message the instance of, well, let's just say message unknown error. Actually, let's just send the error if it's an instance of Zod error. So error e instance of Zod error, question mark, e, otherwise null. And we can get rid of this. And this would be like dot status. And again, here we could do, let's actually make this a conditional here. So like say const is user error or is client error. Don't really want to blame the user. So if it is a client error, then we're going to do 400, otherwise 500. And then we're going to render if is client error e, otherwise null. Okie doke, and get rid of that. Okay, so let's see what this looks like now. Ta-da, we get an error. And so here we could say something like the body is, if there's an error, then do error dot message, otherwise null, or otherwise unknown error. Unknown error has occurred. Please try again later. Okay, so now we've got our error page, right? And if we actually look at the network tab here, we should see this is returning a 500. So it's a 500, but it does have HTML. And if we add another thing here so that there's a Zod error, then we get this, and it's a 400. So one of the problems with just logging this Zod error is, you know, what we're getting is this JSON structure. And we could do that, or we could log, like convert that into a more useful string is what I'm thinking here. So I feel like that's what I want to do. And I think I might put that in here, like export const error to string. Let's see, let's first look at what Zod actually supports here and see if it has a way of doing that. Error handling. Dot format. Is that what I want? Name, errors, expected string, receive numbers. It's kind of what I want. doesn't quite get me all the way there. Dot flatten, is that what I want? Let's see. Let us see. So here we're going to accept a error, Zod error, and it's going to return a string. Error.flatten. And we got to import this. So this is an array, right? What's the difference between field errors? The field errors key points to an object that groups all issues by key. The form errors is a list of issues that occurred on the root. Okay. So let's just do this. Const flattened, just call it flat. And what we're going to do is concatenate these things. So we're going to return flat dot form errors dot concat flat dot field errors. What's this complaining about? Oh, that's an object. Object dot. That's actually, I mean, yeah, I feel like I might want to just put this right into the view. It's a little awkward, but like if error instance of Zod error, then let's just do this. First of all, I don't know if I can actually use the instance of thingy in if error instance of Zod error. Oh, I see. So what this is actually complaining about is Zod error is not present in my view, which is annoying, but that's okay. So basically I can fix that by adding it here. And well, really, I don't need to add it in the view bag. I'll just add it in that specific route. Here. So now what? If I refresh, and yeah, just get rid of the equals there. Let's just see if that shows up. Yeah, okay. So if it is an instance of Zod error, then we're going to want to do something. Otherwise, we're going to want to do this. Let's do it like this. If error instance of Zod error, else if error, really we could do error and error.message, or an unknown error has occurred. Okay, so now we have a space here to actually kind of log all of our errors. So what do we want to do here? Maybe I'll just do like a simple list. So I'll do like there was an error validating your request, colon, and then UL, and then each field or each form error of, let's put a bar error equals error.flatten. Is it a dot? I think it's, oh no, it's a dash for those, right? So for each form error of flat dot form error, form errors. Yep. Form error. And then each field error of flat dot field errors. This is going to be field of object dot entries, field error 0, field error 1. Something like that. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, I forgot my plus. Another plus. Yeah, okay. Seems good. And I'll put a dot content on here as well so that it's formatted. Is that not... I guess this shouldn't really be a P. It should be like a div. Yeah, okay. Because you can't nest other things inside a P, a paragraph. Okay, so this works okay. It's not perfect. One of the problems is like it's not clear, is this date 2 coming from the request body, from query parameters, you know, etc. It would be, ideally, it would be like you have an invalid query parameter. Date 2 is required. But whatever, it's good enough, I think. Usually the users are not going to care at that level of detail anyway. If we did want to do that, it would, this validate request thing would need to, like basically when we catch the error, we would need some way of knowing which type of error it was. And I guess we could do that. I don't know. Oh, what's this about? Let me take a look at this. Ooh, actually, I kind of like this thing. Yeah. Let's try it. Uninstall Zod validation error. It's got a decent number of stars, so that's good. Not seeing any crazy features missing. What's this about? Well, whatever. That actually prompted me to have an interesting thought, though. But let's actually call this is Zod error. And we're not going to need this anymore. And here we're going to do from error E. Is that about right? API, so there's from error and from Zod error. What's the difference? Hey, it's answering my question. It's a good sign. The from error function is less strict. It can accept an unknown error and attempt to convert it into a validation error. So it could almost, it could almost take anything. Let's see, from error E. Let's see what that does. So we're going to get rid of that. All this stuff, let's just comment it out for now. And if error, error. Validation error required at date 2. Okay. What happens if I get rid of that and throw an error instead? It just logs the error text. So I do want to avoid that. So let's do what we had before, like so. And now an unknown error has occurred. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the error thing. We can simplify this now because we don't need that custom Zod stuff, so we can just do this. And this could be called error message. And over here, we call this error message. Cool. So now if we refresh here, an unknown error, if we add the date 2, required at date 2, seems good. So one of the things I was thinking, actually, this validate request function, let's take a look at how this is implemented. So it accepts 3 separate schemas, and then it returns 3 separate objects based on parsing those schemas. What we could do instead is have one schema that parses all 3 things, and that might improve our error messages as well. So for like, so say I do like const request to validate equals params request.params query request.query. Kind of the idea here is we don't actually want the whole express request run through the validator, just these 3 parts of it. And then we're going to return schema.parse request to validate. And it's schema. And then here, like these are going to be I'm just kind of leaving the old stuff in. Well, let's just get rid of it. Doesn't really matter. We can always revert the file change if we want to. So this is schema t request. And we don't need either of those anymore. Okay, so what does that look like now here? So for example, let's go up to the top one. This is the top one here, yeah. So this part is still gonna work, but instead of validating receiving 3 schemas here, it's gonna be 1. And it's gonna be like z.object, and then underneath that is gonna be params z.object. Like that. Right? And kind of the advantage of this is, well, let's just see. So if we go to manual, this works. That's the page we're changing here. That's why I'm checking on this. If we add something in here where it's like page 2, now we get an error, and it is telling us that it's in the params. This value that has an error is in the params. The other advantage of this that makes me want to switch to it as well is we don't have to have those z.unknowns for the other types. So, you know, in this case, we only care about params, so that's all we need to define. I feel like this makes sense. I might refactor everything to use it, even though that sounds kind of annoying. Let's just do it, though. So this might be a good place to, you know, use an AI if I was going to do that. Params, but I'm not going to do that. And we can get rid of this throw new error. Get rid of the date 2. So down here, again, we're going to do z.object, add a closing, and then this is going to be body. And down here, again, z.object, body, and params, no query. Down here, we just have params. Down here, we have params, and we have body. Okay. Here, there's nothing. Here, there's body. And that's it. Here, there's params, and that's it. Yep. Here, there's params and query. That's it. Oh yeah, gotta add this. Here we've got params and body. Body. Again, we've got params. And that's it. Here there's nothing. Here we've got body, and that's it. Get rid of those. Save. And here we've got nothing. Okay, I think we addressed them all. So let's commit some stuff here. I've made a few changes at once and haven't committed them. I kind of want to separate them out. So we've got the renaming. So let's first do the renaming part. So we renamed it to set. That's probably the only thing in this page related to that. Yeah. But this is the rename. This is also a rename. That's not a rename. This is a rename. This is a rename. And this is a rename. Okay, rename to set. And then we can add this Zod validation error. Add Zod validation error. And we can, let's do all of the changes here. I believe everything in this file is just, or no, everything. Everything in this file is just updating those schemas. And then we also, of course, want to commit the actual change to update the schema. We can get rid of that function. Update, validate. I guess we don't need that import anymore. Validate request to use a single schema. Yeah. Okay. And then we can have another thing here where it is add HTML error page. And I guess I can just say like if is Zod error, don't need to, or if not is Zod error, I mean. We don't need to log when there's a validation error. That's not something that's like a bug in the app. So as a administrator, I'm not concerned about it. And then we are sending this, if it is Zod error, 400, otherwise 500. Error message is Zod error. Yeah, so let's just test this one more time. If I, in my settings page, throw a new error, boo, save. I guess I should sign in. Settings, we get an error. And if we look at the logs, we should see that error. Yeah, cool. Okay. So that's when a page cannot be loaded. When a page can't be loaded, there's really only so much you can do. One thing I will add here as well is another thing that's like return to, let's do it like this. Return to home. Let's see. I guess I have to generate another error here to see it. Let's go back to the today page. I was trying to think if there was a way to like make an error without having to actually change my schema, but it's easiest to just change the schema. Return to home. And that, redirects me to the today page because I'm logged in, but also, why am I signed out now? Does that always happen when there's an error? Not entirely sure. To test that out, let's actually move this down here. Could do like throw new error test. Okay, so now, oh, I see. So it's not that I was actually signed out. It's that the user isn't actually in that view. So really what that's telling me is I should still be passing in the user into that view, as well as probably the request.viewBag when there's an error here. So error request.viewBag, and I'll have to use a different type for that. This is going to be request with session. So there's maybe a session here. And then we're going to do request.viewBag, user request.user. So now if I refresh, if I go to manage exercises, is that not where I had my error? I guess I took that out. Well, let's just do it here. Throw new error. Boo. So now if I go to the today page, there's an error, but it still has the context to tell me that I'm signed in, right? Okay. Cool. So let's add that here and add this. And amend my last commit, because we're basically fixing an issue with the last commit. Okie doke. Yeah, I mean, the page looks kind of weird, but hey, it's an error page. Okay, so that is good. So one of the other things now is the error handling when an AJAX request fails. This is a little bit different, right? Just checking on having some bitrate issues. Hopefully it's not too bad to watch. It's like my bitrate is too high. I don't know. Anyway, let's do the AJAX error stuff. So the idea with this one now is if I go to the today page and, I try and add a new set, and for some reason that request fails. So let's again simulate that. If we go post/sets, that's actually not a good example because I think when I add a new set, it refreshes the whole page, right? Yeah. It's more like one of these. Although that is something that I'll want to consider. But we can worry about that in a minute. For now, let's do the simple case. So if I do something like this, it's like it makes a request. If that request fails, which would be something here, so say I do throw new error, test error. Refresh. So now if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, see, this is returning a 500. If I actually look at the response, it's going to be that HTML response with the template. If I refresh here, that is now just 1, 2, 3, right? It didn't actually persist it to the backend. If I didn't have my network tab open here, I wouldn't know that there was a problem. So there's a couple things here. One is the fact that this is returning an HTML error when we're doing an AJAX request. So that's another adjustment we'll have to make in the controller method here. The idea is just giving this a little thought. So usually we would base basically the error that we return on the content type. And if I recall, doesn't Express have like this like negotiate thing? It does not. There's something like that. Let's see if we can, if we look at the Express docs here. Guide, error handling. Rec.xhr. Is that, I think maybe what we want? Rec.xhr. So we would have something here where it's like, if this is an XHR request, then we're going to and you know, XHR, I believe that stands for XML HTTP request, which is sort of like the formal API name for what people call AJAX. But basically it's a request being made from JavaScript in the browser as opposed to being issued by the browser itself, if that makes sense. I mean, it's all issued by the browser, of course, but the idea is that instead of actually rendering it a view, in this case, we're just going to want to return some JSON metadata about the error, or the error itself. So we already have this resp.status, and I left that out because we're going to have the same logic in both cases. And so here we're going to do like resp.send. Error is odd error from error. Otherwise, no. And I'll just call this error message as well, I guess. Okay. And maybe for this is odd error, I wonder if I should actually use this thing. Is odd error like E? I don't think we have that problem of multiple, like what this is talking about here is there's an issue where when you're using instance of, it's really comparing whether the thing on the left side is, you know, if the prototype of that thing is the thing on the right, basically, somewhere down the prototype chain. And if you have two different versions of Zod, basically you have two different error classes, two different objects, and if just because one of them is in the prototype chain doesn't mean that the other one is, if that makes sense. Even though they're both called Zod error, they're actually different, right? And this is something that you can run into with like arrays as well, which is why you're not supposed to do like instance of array. You're supposed to do like array dot is array. Because if you have like two different JavaScript contexts, like you have a sandboxed context and a non-sandboxed context, they actually have two different instances of the array constructor. And so the instance of check doesn't actually work. Anyway, so this is doing something that, you know, don't really need to worry about exactly what it is, but hopefully it works pretty well. And this, yeah, it should just be like that. It's just a Boolean. It doesn't need to have that ternary condition there. Okay, so now let's see just what happens if we change this. So we're still getting a 500, and we're still getting that. Is that not... I wonder if I need to restart the server. Let's see if that does anything, just out of curiosity. 500, so it's still returning a response. So this rec.xhr thing doesn't really seem to be doing what I expected. So it's just not true. I don't really know where that gets set from either. But that's okay. What we can do instead, kind of the way that I was planning on doing that, is like based on the content type of the request. So is there like a content type thing in here, I wonder, or do I have to check the header? Request dot accepts JSON. Let's see. Okay, the response is still that. So let's look at the header here. So we have request header accept text event stream. Oh, see, this is kind of a weird thing. I forgot about this with the datastar library that we're using is not even actually using JSON to do these requests. It's simulating a form submission. So it might not be easy to tell. So I might have to actually check the actual content type. Or I could base it on that, I guess. JSON or text event stream, sure. Okay, so now the response is the JSON object. Fine. Okay. And I might put this here. So we actually get an error message every time. It just makes the client-side code a little bit simpler. An unknown error has occurred. Okay, so now we need to figure out how to actually handle those. which is going to be a bit interesting probably. So let's use this page as an example. What we're changing here is one of these inputs. And what it's then doing is this @post business. Now, I believe I recall we could do like a catch here. Catch e console.log e. Let's see what we get. Is there something in the console? There's not. If I do that, then that should also, well, actually, is this even the right thing? So this one is number. This is for weight or distance. So if I do weight, let's actually do that. Refresh, weight. I think I have something like this somewhere around here, right? If I look for @post, right, so here there's a .then. So let's just put it on this exercise one here because that's kind of simpler to see. So if I switch that, it's still just failing. And I don't think that's the actual console log in there. No. If I, do I have to like do a .then? V? Seems weird. No, that's not helping either. Let's see. I wonder what Datastar has to say about that. Action plugins, @post. Works the same as @get. So what does this have to say? What is this? @fit. Oh, geez, that's weird. Where's the documentation of the options for these guys? So there's an abort signal. That doesn't really help. There's retrying. What? It does retries? I don't see any retries happening though. Like it just does the one request and then it fails. Not that I really even want it to do retries, so I'm not really complaining about that, but yeah. Oh, so there's what? I wonder if this works at all. Like, what if I just put that here? I'm curious to see if that will work even though I'm not actually using server-side events. No, it does not. I mean, really, this is kind of a limitation with this library to me, is that it has this weird dependency on server-sent events, kind of, which I don't really like. So kind of the main thing that I'm using it for anyway is sort of like handling signals and stuff. In theory, if we wanted to, we could replace it with something like Alpine.js. And, you know, I don't want to replace it because of this one specific problem, but just because of there consistently being problems, if that makes sense. Like the data star stuff is kind of tricky to work around sometimes. So this is interesting. You can see even when the request succeeded, or failed, I mean, the promise succeeded, right? I think, like, I think that's how it works. Yeah. So with something like Alpine, you know, it still supports the signal stuff, but instead of using this custom at post thing, you know, it's using, you would use some kind of other standard library to do that. So we know it has signals and the ability to dynamically change the content of things and stuff. The only thing I don't know if it has is debouncing on the requests and stuff. Dispatch a custom browser event, store, watch, data store. I mean, where's the where's the docs? Show me something more interesting here. So like on can do stuff. Dot prevent, dot stop, outside window document. So it does have debounce. Okay. So I kind of like that. Now, we don't necessarily need to switch to Alpine in order to do that, though. We could also replace these posts with just like a fetch call. And we might actually need to do that in order to be able to even tell if they failed or not, which is a bit annoying. I don't know. I'm torn. I don't know if we should just kind of keep going with this and not have the error handling or what. Let's actually try to make a helper function here that we could maybe reuse instead of these at posts. So if we go to main here, we got like window.exerciseTracker. blah, blah, blah stuff. In order to make it shorter, I guess, I'm going to do like window dot et send or et fetch. Sure. Just something. And this is going to be a function. Function et fetch. And so this is going to be async. I don't know if you can do async in JavaScript like that, but we're going to give it a shot. Const resp equals await fetch. So this is going to have a URL. And an init object. And I'll just do, I guess I'll just, for now, just pass them both through like that. And then we can put this in a try catch. So kind of what I would like is for this function here to be able to indicate what happens when there's an error. The problem is with data star, I don't know if there's a way to really do that. Because kind of what we would want to do is almost like window dot error equals E. But that, I don't think that actually works in data star. Then if we reference something like $error at some place, like let's go to the layout page here and add a notification, which I will yoink from here. Oh, no, I don't want that. I will yoink from here, I guess. Notification. And this would be like data text error. And maybe I'll put that on a P node. Okay, so now that's always going to be there. An error occurred, blah, blah, blah. And this is complaining about $error is not defined. If I do a fetch, well, first let's actually just do like window dot error equals null. Is it still going to complain about it being not defined? No, it doesn't. And it actually renders a null. Okay, so maybe this actually will work. This is interesting. So you know, we would add something where it's like data show error. So now that should disappear. But if we make a request using this helper function, it should reappear if the request fails. And I kind of want to put in some default stuff here. As well, maybe. like we're going to set some things that we're always going to be setting. So with the way the app works right now, it's using these form datas, but really it would probably be better if it was actually using JSON. There's no real reason to be using the multi-part form data when you're not like uploading files, where you actually want like binary blobs in your request, which we're not doing, of course. It's just how DataStar works. But if we're not using the DataStar library, then we should just be able to, let's get rid of that, use JSON. Anyway, so we're going to want to set that as a header. And is there anything else we're going to want to set? I don't think so. So let's do like headers, content type, application, JSON. And we could add any other headers that might be in here. Like that. And really, I kind of actually want this to just be like the body. So if we just do that, then this would be like body. And I think the body has to be a string when we're talking about fetch here. So yeah, well, a string or one of these other things, but it can't just be an arbitrary JSON thing. So what we're going to need to do is a JSON.stringify. JSON.stringify body. And we could say like type of body equals string body, otherwise JSON stringify body. Okay. And I guess one other thing would be like the method, which I might actually put that first. Method URL body makes the most sense to me. And here we would say like body. If there is a body, then do that. Otherwise do undefined. Okay. So, and then we need to return a response. So with fetch, you have to do like return await resp.json, if I recall. So this JSON is like taking that response, converting it into a JSON object, and returning it. And then if there's an error, we put it on Windows or window.$error. For most of these things, we don't actually care about the response, but yeah. Sometimes we might. You never know. So this is a post. And instead of content type form here, this is part of the problem. It's like we're going to need to rework how these are defined to explicitly pass through the signals that we want. But let's just try it with this content type form because we're testing what happens when it fails anyway. It doesn't actually have to work. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here, oh yeah, I was testing with this. So if I change that, did it not do the thing? It's not doing anything at all. Et fetch. That does exist, right? Oh, hush. Hmm. Okay, let's just see. Okay, so a couple things here. We're getting an error. It's assigning it to window.$error. That's not actually causing the thingy to show up though. There should be like an error thing that shows up when $error is set. So we can kind of tell that's not working. The problem is we don't really want a, like the problem is we want to assign this from JavaScript, right? But DataStar works based on these like DOM elements where they don't necessarily actually, like maybe we actually want to use this set all. Sets the value. Yeah, so what if I do like window dot set all? I guess just like set all. And this would be error QE. And it's not happy with that syntactically. I could do it like this. Yeah, okay. Let's see if that works. So now if I do this, window.atSetAll is not a function. Let's see. So usually with something like DataStar, it will have some kind of property on window. It doesn't necessarily have one though. So where is this at set all thingy even coming from? Let's look at the DataStar code. Search set all. Hmm. What even is this? I don't even know. I don't think that's what I want though. um, I'm wondering like where it's actually defined in the code. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's do it a different way. If we actually look at library here, maybe source, plugins, official, backend, actions. Yeah, but I guess it's not a backend action, browser actions. No. Core attributes. Logic actions, set all. Okay, so here's where it's defined. And then where is that used? Let's see. Bundles data star. Is that where we just were? Engine. Apply. Yes, I have no idea how this works. So that's kind of a bit of a problem because it's not clear how to actually call this function. One possibility is if I can actually import it from Datastar. So like if we look at node modules, oh, it's not even in my node modules, is it? I just have it here. See, this is kind of why I was thinking of switching to Alpine. So if we think about Alpine, for example, instead, what we would want to do is use something like this alpine.store, I believe. Which could go like right into the JavaScript. Although I guess we would be using alpine.data. Yeah. So that's an option. But it's kind of a considerable pain to switch everything over. I don't know if we really have time to do all of that today. Let's see, what other changes have we actually made here? So this change we do, I'm just going to go ahead and commit this. So basically what we're doing here is return JSON errors for XHR looking requests. And I might actually, well, we'll see. I can change that logic later if I want to. Test error, obviously we don't need to do that. This bit we do want to do. So let's just give it a shot here and start refactoring some things to use Alpine and see what it feels like. Bun install Alpine. So aside from Alpine, what are some other kind of options that we could think of? There's, let me think. So there's HTMX, but that's not really what we want. The idea behind HTMX is it's kind of like you can swap parts of your page dynamically, which isn't exactly what we're looking for. There's intercooler. I'm just kind of going through my memory of stuff. I didn't know that was a word outside of JavaScript land. Okay. Intercooler JS. So this one has got like posting functionality. In theory, you could use this kind of alongside Alpine, I think. The thing is, like, this element of loading the response content into this element is not what we really want to do. We kind of prefer to just send the request, and it doesn't need to do anything after that. Include the serialized version of the nearest parent form. I see include, in which you can use a jQuery selector to indicate what other elements to serialize. Don't really want any of that. I think if we just do Alpine is probably the way to go. I've always kind of wanted to use Alpine, so that's sort of why I'm switching over. So the other thing is, like, we don't really need to pull it in this way. We can actually install it with Node, I think. Let's see. Alpine.js. Yeah, let's see what it says here. So install it from a script tag or import it as a module. Yeah, this is what we want to do. So it's just Alpine.js. And then in this main, we can like start importing some of that stuff. So one of the things is we're actually going to need to initialize it like so. So we can just go ahead and do that right up here. And that should be great. So now if everything's still running, if I go over here, refresh this. So now I should see Alpine as an object. Yeah, cool. So now we can start to actually use that thing. And so let's try it. Okay, so we're going to want to declare data, but this particular error thing, we're probably gonna, well, you know, it's fine actually. So let's do like X data views layout. X data equals error null, I guess. And then we're going to want to have this be like X text equals error. And maybe I'll call this like the error message. Okay. And so, and I also would want this to be like X show error message, right? show open. Yeah. Okie doke. And we would want to use this xcloak thing as well, I believe. So, you know, if we refresh here, you see how it kind of pops up the error thing and then it disappears. Unable to initialize, trying to load Alpine before a body. Okay. Let's actually fix that first. So kind of what this is complaining about is like the script up here in the head is being loaded too early in the page. So I could actually just move that down like to the bottom of the body. Like that. So that's now going to be loaded at the very end. And so now that works, but you can see like that flash. Also, exercise tracker is not defined, so that's telling me I might need to put it actually like here. Let's see what that is like. Yeah, so now we don't get any errors. So now it actually, that I'm not seeing the flash of that content. So maybe we don't need to worry about the xcloak thing. So now we need to assign this error message when the request fails, basically. So it would be something like alpine.data, I believe. Let's look over here. Alpine.data. And this would be error message. And then it's interesting. It's returning a function. It doesn't really need to be a function. I wonder if this is going to work. Let's see. Dunk, 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 dunk. Error message is E. Let's say test error. Kind of curious what that is going to do. So if I go to the today page, switch this, reference error string is not defined, line 117. Oh, that should be quoted. Click. Yeah, so it's not quite doing what I want with the error message business. I feel like I might need globally register and reuse the data portion of a component. Global state. I feel like this is kind of what we want, maybe. So let's try making an alpine.store instead. We'll do this, you know, at as soon as the script is loaded. Alpine.store, and we could call this error, and then message null. Could be like as error false, message null. And then $store.tabs. So if we look over at the layout, this would be like $store.error.message. And up here would be $store.error.hasError. And then we get rid of that X data. And then we need to actually assign that from our JavaScript. Define it manually before manually calling alpine.start. Okay. Using the store magic property, so can I do this? Like alpine dot $store dot error dot has error equals true. Dot error dot message equals test message. Does that work? I don't know, it's not even getting to this console.log error. But it is doing the requests, right? Yeah. What's going on with that then? What if I comment both of those out? Is that get rid of that for one thing? Rasp. Oops. It should be failing, right? Didn't fail. But OK is false. So I guess because the response is JSON, it's not actually failing. So I would have to say like if resp dot OK, if not resp dot OK, throw new error, bad request. Let's just see if we can get into the pathway that we're trying to get into here. Okay, so here we did get into the error finally, but it's got this problem, cannot read properties of undefined. So this $store magic property is not actually on Kind of running into the same problems with Alpine that we had with the other thing. Right, so store is a function. What about dollar $data? No, that doesn't work. I mean, do I need to do some weird alpine.evaluate business? What if I make this be like body document dot, is that a thing? Document.body? Well, that works. That's weird, but it works. Okay. Weird, but it works. That's what we're going to be doing. Document.body, store.error.has error true. And store.error.message equals test message error. Let's just for now just be like an error has occurred. Okay, so now if I do this, that fails and doesn't like the semicolon. I wonder if I could do it like this. Message and unknown error has occurred. Okay, so that works. This notification should also have, well, we should actually use a toast. I guess they just have notifications. So, you know, we need that delete button. That's what I was thinking. So notification, and then at the top, like button dot delete, and then like X on click store dot error dot as error equals false. Right? Is that X equals on colon click. Okay, so now if I do this, we get an error. If I click the X, the error goes away. Seems fine. Okay, so that works. The problem now is in order to use that, we need to be basically refactoring everything in the app to use Alpine instead of Datastar. And that is not something that we are going to have time for today. I'm thinking to like is there a... Probably be using this to make requests or something like that. Don't really know. Anyway, I'm not too worried about that for now. Let's reactivity, alpine.effect. Just the usual stuff. About async. Oh, so you can straight up put awaits in your things. That's pretty slick. I like that. Oh, this is something that I don't care about. Okay. Well, whatever. So I feel like there's some things we can do with Alpine that maybe we couldn't do with Datastar. I don't really want to actually deploy this change though. So let's actually do a git push without that. And then we're going to add these things and we're going to call this something like let's get rid of that. We're going to call this something like, get rid of that too. Take me to the file, get rid of the thing that doesn't work. Work in progress, experiment with Alpine. Okay. So with that, I think we're pretty much going to be done for the day. Let's check on our notes here. We did improve the error handling when a page cannot be loaded. We're doing a fair bit of work to do the AJAX request business. Again, I mean, if we were using a library like React, some of these things would be a lot easier. But we're not, unfortunately. Okay, I think that's about it. And we pushed our changes already. So I think I'm going to call it for today. Thanks, y'all. See you next week. Bye-bye.